and get started. First thing on the, do you mind if we just? Larry, you're up.
All right, so from the last meeting I wrote down, it was most of the commission's aware, McKenna may not be, but we have to come up with goals or strategies. And so right off I put goal, but then the statute calls it strategies, but then the goals, and how are you going to measure it, and what are the benchmarks going to be? And so the only ones that I really formulated any type of measure or benchmark for were the ones that the planning commission wanted me to look at. And so the first goal is, rezone for densities necessary to facilitate the production of moderate income housing. And I think that a perfect tool that we've approved over the last year is the interchange overlay zone. And it doesn't say anywhere in the statute that you can't use existing tools that you have in your already in your ordinance. And so the timeline would be to rezone all qualifying properties to the IOZ by December 31st, 2025. And you say, well, boy, that's a long time out. But as you get reading through the measures and benchmarks, time really catches up with you rather quickly. And also in the statute, it allows some flexibility. I can't remember the exact wording, but I'll just use flexibility in achieving your goals. And so I think if we put the timeframes out there at a reasonable level, then that allows the staff and the commission and the city council time to reevaluate maybe a goal or a strategy. And so I don't know if you want me to go through all these measures or just talk about the benchmarks, or have you read through them? Are there things in particular you want to discuss with each one, or how do you want me to do this tonight?
Why don't you just give us an overview for the preliminary, and then when we have our actual meeting, maybe if we have some additional questions, we can get a little more detail. And
so goal one will be basically to identify the areas that qualify for the IOZ. Now we already have a map formulated, but not everything is been zoned to the IOZ. And so one of the major strategies will be to actually rezone areas, as you can see, to the IOZ, and that would be changing the land use map and rezoning and all of that. The development agreement will be done by December 31st, 2025. So it would start with evaluating the areas. What are the constraints, the utility constraints, transportation constraints? What type of master development agreement do we need? All of those things that seem to take time to get done. And then, of course, communicating all this with the property owners, see what their willingness is to have their property entitled in a certain way. And so that's basically, an overview of strategy one. And as you can see on the strategies, the statute requires what the goal is, what type of goal is. And so the first one, and then this next one is ongoing. So we'll be working on these. So you identify and utilize general fund subsidies or other sources of revenue to waive construction related fees that are otherwise generally imposed by the municipality for the construction or rehabilitation of moderate income housing. And so the timeline would be to adopt this policy by December 31st, 2024. So that's a little less of a time frame, but it takes a lot of work going, identifying with various city departments. What's the cost of the city? Who qualifies for this? How are we going to use this money, and that type of thing? And so what this would basically, this strategy would be to identify if it's a potential tool that would uh, result in the creation of moderate income housing or the rehabilitation of moderate income housing. This next goal would be an ongoing zone. That's the zone or rezone for higher density or moderate income housing residential development. And I think it's interesting, in a moderate income housing strategy, the state cannot just say moderate income housing. They say higher density. And so it kind of sends a mixed message, because you can have higher density that is way out of the moderate income housing range. So I think they're almost forcing us to declare a percentage of whatever the higher density housing is moderate income housing. And this is already a tool that we have, and it's a residential overlay district. The commission and council approved this a few years back, and this would be larger, older retail centers that need to be revitalized with some type of influx of multifamily housing. And so this would make use of the residential overlay district. And this would be, it's really similar to the IOZ and the steps that would be taken, the measures and the benchmarks. And that would also be adopted by December 31st, 2025. Now, the reason this is in red, and you may have already figured this out, is because this is one of the required strategies that we have to adopt, because we have a TRAX line, or a fixed guideway rail system. We have 6 stations here. And so this will be a one-time goal, and that would be amend land use regulations to allow for new moderate income residential development and mixed use zones near major transit corridors. We already have the city center land use regulations, but it doesn't make any mention of moderate income housing in that zoning ordinance at this time. And so I think that we would analyze that ordinance and probably come up with a percentage of moderate income housing, who qualifies, what would be their qualifications for the development. That, just all of a bunch of analysis that would take place to determine how feasible, or if this is a good fit for the community. And that would be adopted at a much shorter time frame, just over 1.5 years. So if this goes to the council and they approve this, then the planning commission will probably be working on this strategy, I would say in 2022 or early 2023. The next strategy, and this is a ongoing strategy, to be implement zoning incentives for moderate income housing in new developments. And the timeline for this would be implement the integrated housing ordinance by December 31st, 2024. And so that is an ordinance that's actually before the planning commission this evening for a recommendation to the city council. That has a built-in components that would create moderate income housing within that ordinance. It has a density buy-up if somebody is willing to create moderate income housing. Then it also has a minimum overall development requirement of 3% of the development be moderate income housing. So for 100 units, they'd have to have at least 3 that are moderate income housing. Now, it doesn't create a lot, but I can't see anywhere in the statute that says that the state is requiring a certain amount from West Jordan, just that we're working toward that end and that goal. And so this would be probably, a very quick turnaround would be by December 31st, 2024. That's because it's a new ordinance and it requires some identification of areas that could be potential in the integrated housing ordinance. So this is a one-time goal, and this is something that the Planning Commission had interest in, and that's explore participation in a community land trust program for moderate income housing. Cities usually aren't land trusts, but there are nonprofits out there that are land trusts. That last ordinance I just spoke of, or the one that the Planning Commission will be reviewing tonight, the integrated ordinance, that is how the properties, the moderate income housing properties could be developed as part of a community land trust. And so this would be a rather short time frame again. And this is basically just exploring the possibility of a community land trust. We may do all the analysis, talk to the finance department, economic development, whoever, the city attorney's office and the city council, they may determine that it's not the best fit for the city, but it is a goal that we are at least, or strategy that we at least are implementing with our moderate income housing plan. It doesn't say that it has to be established. It's just explore participation. And this verbiage is right out of the statute. So I don't think that we're not making this up. It's something that they're allowing municipalities the flexibility or their local government rule to explore. Another strategy, and this is a one-time strategy, is create a housing and transit reinvestment zone. Pursuant to Title 63 and Chapter 3, Part 6. And then again, this is just, as you can see, the timeline is determine the feasibility of the TRZ by December 31st, 2025. Duncan and I have, well, Duncan has already explored this and looked at this a little more. We've spoken to economic development. They're not a big fan of it, but that doesn't stop us from pursuing it because the city council may be a big fan of it. And so we really need to leave it up to the legislative discretion of the council and not to administration whether they want to do it or not. And so this is just to determine if it's the feasibility of it. And that's by December 31st, 2025.
Do you want me to chime in a little?
Sure, go ahead,
too?
because I need to get a drink of water here.
So the housing and transit reinvestment zones, it's kind of a new strategy, but it seems to jive really well with the fact that we already have the transit oriented districts. We already have station area plans that we're going to have to do for the 6 track stations that we have in town. And what it looks into is possible additional funding. And if we already potentially qualify, or at least there's a somewhat of a likelihood or a high likelihood even that we do, I think it is a really good strategy to at least consider. As Larry mentioned, we may get into it and find out we don't qualify, but if there's at least a good chance that we do and there's funding available to, and if there is funding available, it goes towards higher utilization of the track stations and mass transit in general. It goes towards housing and some other things. So, and of course, it's earmarked funding that has to be used for just that purpose. But it is potentially a good strategy to consider.
And so another strategy the Planning Commission wanted to explore was to develop a modern income housing 55 plus project. It's been several years. I think it's before 2010 that the one on 3200 West, I affectionately refer to it as the Sutherland's Lumberyard senior housing, because where that was built used to be where the Sutherland's Lumber would have their, I don't know who remembers Sutherland's Lumber or not, I do, but that's where they would store their lumber is back there. And it was through our CDBG administrator at that time and the city council and various other departments, they developed a 55-year and older community there, or a project there. And then also another one that was done earlier is the Sugar Factory Road project. So it's been over a decade since the city has done something like this. And the need for senior housing is not going away, and particularly moderate income senior housing, because there's a lot of senior housing being built around the state, but a lot of it's very costly. And I think as long as someone has a lot of money from a home they've owned for a long time, or they've saved a lot of money, or they've had a good job, it can be an unachievable thing at times. And so it's needed. And as you can see, this would go through, where would the potential areas be for a moderate income housing project that's a senior housing project, all kinds of analysis. Who would we partner with? The city has partnered with on all the senior housing projects with different nonprofits that build these type of things, that are experts at it. They're expert at not only building it, but running them. I think that a lot of the funding could come from block grant sources or home funds or other type of federal funding. So that would be all part of the analysis. And so this is probably the longest strategy, and the construction, at least on my benchmark, would be complete by December 31st, 2028. You think, boy, that's a long time's out there until you realize how fast time goes. Particularly as I get older, time seems to compress on me. When you're in elementary school, it seemed like the school year was forever. And now, we're in July. And so, but this also gives plenty of options for the city council to reevaluate this strategy if it's just not going to happen. If we get into it a year or two and it's just is not going to prove feasible. But these strategies, the statute, all it says is that we have to be making an attempt at doing this, and our success or failure will be can be determined by a lot of different factors. And so, but it is a strategy worth pursuing. And then the final goal, this is of course mandated by the state, is that by December 31st, 2025, we have to have at least 4 station area plans updated, or we have to determine or send to the state and the Wasatch Front Regional Council why they don't need to be updated. And that's if we don't get a qualifying application. I don't want to muddy the water with that tonight, but this is a strategy that we have to adopt because we have 6 station areas. The new planner that we hired in place of Brian Barrett, who retired, that is one of his main focuses for the next few years, is to lead the charge on that and to get these things going and get them adopted. And so his name's Taylor Jensen, and you'll probably be seeing a lot of Mr. Jensen over the next few years. And of course, Ray and Mark aren't off the hook. They'll be helping all along the way. And so those are the strategies that I took from the Planning Commission. Do you have any questions, concerns, changes you want to see from looking at the staff report? I know that I did a really condensed presentation on these because it would have taken I was expecting you to read through those strategies or the benchmarks and measures and let me know if you have any concerns at this point. So,
any questions?
What's the difference between the TOD and the, what it was, the reinvestment zone or the senior housing overlay with the MIH zone? I mean, those seem sort of the same.
So the TOD is a transit oriented development zone. So that is just a tool. That's a zoning ordinance. And the IOZ, that's just another tool, but it doesn't talk about the densities or the type of housing. So I think we would use those tools to create investment in moderate income housing. So we don't have to reinvent the wheel completely, just a couple of spokes on the wheel. And I think that Duncan probably can answer the transit reinvestment better.
Right. Yeah. So the difference between those zones that Larry was just talking about, residential overlay zone, interchange overlay zone, transit oriented district, those are all city zones that or overlay zones, which can be used to encourage different types of development in different places. These other items are functions of state law. Stationary plans, those are required now by the state legislature for cities that have either BRT bus routes, those rapid transit routes, which we don't have any, I don't think. And then if you have front runner or track station, in our case, it's the 6 track stations. And so that's a statutory state law requirement that we do those plans over a certain period of time. Also, we'll actually participate 2 more, one that we overlap with Midvale a little bit, and another one that we overlap with South Jordan. It's their station, but the half-mile radius goes into our city boundaries. That's a function of state law. Then this other one, the housing and transit reinvestment zone, that's not required by state law, but it's optional under state law for a city to apply for it. And if we meet the criteria and if that application is accepted, then we're entitled to additional earmarked special funding that can only be used in those special transit areas, either on housing or certain kinds of parking and that kind of thing. So those are, one's a funding tool, the other one's a required planning tool by the state. Hopefully that's responsive to what your question was.
Yep, thank you.
Anybody else? Okay, I think we're good for right now. Thank you, Larry. We'll go ahead and adjourn for 5 minutes. Okay. We'll commence on our planning commission meeting for, what is today? June 7th, 2022. All 7 members are in attendance, including our newest member. I want to congratulate you and welcome you. First on the agenda is review of, no, oh yeah, it is. I'm sorry, I'm up there. We'll do the oath of office from our newest commissioner. Angie.
I'll just have you stand in front of this mic right here. Okay. See if we can get this. And have you raise your right hand and repeat after me. I state your name.
I, McKenna Marchant,
Do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I'll support, obey, and defend
that I'll support, obey, and defend
the Constitution of the United States
the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of Utah
and the Constitution of the State of Utah
and the laws and ordinances of the City of West Jordan.
and the laws and ordinances of the City of West Jordan,
And I'll discharge the duties
and I'll discharge the duties
of my office with fidelity.
of my office with fidelity.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
And I could just get you to sign these two here. This one's for me and this one's for you.
Thank you. Congratulations again. I got just a quick personal preference comment or a couple comments real quick. As most of you know, I kind of spearhead the Field of Flags. That's coming up again this Saturday and the Saturday after, if anybody has got some time and would like to help us set up the flags on the west side of the park. We'd love to see you. It starts at 8 o'clock and usually goes for a couple hours. So anybody that's willing to help out with that, I'd greatly appreciate it. And then Julie, if we could, if you would email all of our commissioners the current information as far as cell numbers and stuff. We've had so many new commissioners and stuff. It'd be really good to get the contact information. All right, thank you. All right, we'll get started. First thing on the agenda is approve the minutes. Okay.
I'll go ahead
Trish.
and approve the minutes.
And Ammon,
I swear that wasn't me.
that was yours.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, it's unanimous, 7-0. Okay, this is on the public hearing with the final action by the Planning Commission. Sienna Hills 2, approximately 7515 South Copper Rim Drive, preliminary site plan and preliminary subdivision plat, 78 townhomes and 47 single-family lots, and 7 parcels on 13 acres. This is a PCIOZ zone with, is it Stephen Jackson? Oh, come on up. And you're on. Push the button on the right side.
Thank you. So as he stated, this is within the internet or the interstate overlay zone that was recently created. This is the residential portion of that. 47 single family homes and then 78 townhomes. We worked with the staff and they've been great to work with on making sure that we get the site plan and everything laid out correctly. The townhomes that are proposed in here are the similar townhomes that we actually built previously in the other phase of this larger Copper Rim development. The single family homes are the similar to the size of a little bit larger than what you're seeing in some of the smaller portions, but not quite as large as the largest portion. So it's kind of a middle tier, middle income, roughly 35 wide single family homes, 2-car garage. You'll see there's multiple open spaces in there for tot lots and some pickleball courts that we have reserved for that. And then we've also provided an access point for the city to access their water tower since their gate is there through the open space in parcel D. Other than that, it's pretty straightforward. Probably talk a little bit about some of these items in here, but parcel C, one of the questions that we had from the staff was that this was sort of an obscured parcel. So we talked about some different fencing options in here. So we'll require in our CCNRs and even put in our development plan to do something that is a little bit more, I'm not sure if see-through is the right word, but basically right now we're proposing a chain link, vinyl coated chain link fence you see along a lot of the park spaces that will prevent any hiding areas for people to kind of stay back there. And so that will be nice and open to those backyards. And you'll see that a lot in most of the cities in this valley when they have that kind of opened up against open space. Typically, they'll have a little bit more open, non-privacy fencing there. So, do we have any questions?
Commissioner Hatch?
Thank you. On the chain link fence, have you thought also about maybe doing the plastic fence that's slatted? So you can, excuse me, you can still see through it, but it isn't chain link.
Yeah, we're open to that. That was a suggestion by staff on the chain link. If we want to go that route, we're totally open to that as well. Ultimately, where we're at with that, I don't believe, is that a developer required fence? I don't know where we landed on. So it is developer required. So basically, we have to kind of do it in two different parts. We have to obviously state in our CCNRs that if that fence is ever replaced, that those residents keep it to something more open. And then so we can update our plans. If that's what the city and the staff would prefer, we're open to the vinyl with the open sliding as well. So I don't know that we have a preference one way or the other. So if that's what you guys would prefer, we could do that.
I think chain link kind of has a connotation of, I think the slatted is better, but I'm just one person, so.
I agree.
I've seen some of the chain link that's kind of the galvanized or coated.
Yeah, it's a
Or-
vinyl coated, so it's basically a plastic coating on the chain link, so it doesn't rust over time.
Right.
Kind of keeps its appearance nicer, but I mean, like I said, I don't know that we're partial one way or the other.
And I think, I don't know, I would dare say, as Commissioner Hatch probably alluded to, that the slats would give a little bit more privacy to those people that are
Sure.
adjoining the property and stuff.
Yeah, and we see that all the time. There's certain opacity requirements that you see within different jurisdictions, and we can definitely adhere to that. I mean, so we're totally fine with either a semi-private or even a smaller fence to kind of keep that area appearing a little more open. So,
Okay.
Yep.
Any other questions? McKenna?
When is development slotted to begin?
Well, hopefully sometime this fall is when we're hoping to get into the ground there. So that's all going to depend on obviously how quickly we can get through final plat. But ideally sometime this fall, and then we will be vertical with the houses sometime next spring.
Awesome. The area is designated as mixed use. Where are there going to be commercial and office spaces in this area as well, or not in your development?
Yeah, so the portion to the south, as you see here on the screen, that's outside of that red zone is actually going to be, I believe it's Furniture Row is what they're planning at this point. So that'll be a commercial area down there. That is the underlying developer will be working through that process and developing that section out to sell that off as well. So
Awesome. And then there was a few pages in the report that were pretty blurry, and so I wasn't able to see your guys' landscaping schedule there for what you guys were calling out in that. are you going to be kind of landscaping with more water wise techniques, more like local scape kind of stuff and avoiding? I would just like to see us conserve as much water as possible.
That's something we can definitely explore at this point. Where a lot of it is sod and bark. That's typically what we do, and so that's kind of what's slated for in here. So I mean, we can definitely discuss that as a possibility. At this time, I don't know how water wise it is. There's a lot of sod in those open spaces, but that's kind of what it's designed
Yeah.
for. And then in terms of around the individual units themselves, we usually have kind of a smaller kind of front patio / front yard area with a little bit of treescapes along the road. And then each home individually obviously will take care of the front portion of the landscaping, and then the individual buyer will take care of the back landscaping. So it's definitely something that we can explore. At this point, there's not a lot of areas that aren't water wise necessarily, except for the large open spaces that typically you want to see that sod in for people to play in. But I mean, we can definitely look at that.
For sure. Well, I mean, in those activity zones, I think it makes sense to have them be sod.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And this is an HOA, right? So
It is, yeah.
it'll all be maintained by the HOA.
Yeah, so we have 2 HOAs. There'll be a sub HOA and then a master HOA as well, which you guys are familiar with, the Copper Rim HOA out there. So
Okay. Any other questions?
Yes. Can you describe the residents' backyards surrounding parcel C? Do they have their separate yard that is between their home and parcel C? Or does their house go directly into parcel C?
so I'm not sure the exact distance, but it'll be somewhere between 10 to 25 feet between the back of the unit and the parcel. So yes, they will have their own separated backyard space.
And this fence that we've been talking about, will it be on the boundary between their yard and parcel C?
Yes, it'll be on their property line.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, Ray, it looks like you're up. Well, if we have any more questions, we'll let you know. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, members of the Planning Commission, Mr. Chairman. Again, this is part of the Copper Rim ILZ. It's called the Copper Rim Town Center. This is the southernmost area of the Copper Rim development. So just located just on the west side of Smiths, right up against the Mountain View corridor. The area that we're talking about is just outlined in red, just north of the water tank, and then south of some single family homes that are part of the Copper Rim development. 13 acres. The future land use map was changed as part of the Copper Rim development, the ILZ to a mixed use development. And your question was whether or not the area to this would include some commercial uses, and that whole area that's just south of the water tank there will be either commercial or office kind of related uses. But the area where the residents will be, or the residential area, will just be in that area that's outlined in red as part of this development. So what you're looking at tonight is just a preliminary subdivision plat. Typically, we handle the details on the landscaping part of it during the final review. But as the applicant has indicated, that the larger open spaces will have sod in them. I think that makes sense because they're active recreation areas. The townhomes will be just over on the right-hand side of the screen, the east side of the screen. The single-family dwellings will be placed on the west side. Again, we talked a little bit about parcel C, and that was one of the things we brought up in the staff report. That was one of our concerns. You can see the opening to this is roughly 18 feet wide, so it's about the depth of if you can visualize it, about the depth of a parking stall. But our recommendation is, I think our recommendation would be for like no higher than a 4-foot high fence of some kind around the entire parcel C area, just so that you have people looking in on that area, because it won't be lit. And so we just want to make sure that there's that safety issue is addressed. So I think with the limitation on a 4-foot high fence, whatever you decide it to be, whether it's the vinyl coated chain link fence or the fence with slats, or even a low wrought iron fence would work in that area. This is just showing the preliminary site plan. I think the more important part of it is just how it's laid out. You can see the pickleball courts are on the west side of the townhomes. In parcel C, there will be just a little tot lot playground area. This is just a breakdown of the landscape and how that will look. The homes, these are just some examples of the homes built on the property. And the townhomes that are proposed look like this, and those are similar to the ones that are already in the Copper Inn development to the north. So we really don't see any issues with the type of homes or the townhomes that are going to be placed in this development. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have.
Commissioner Quinney.
Commissioner Marchant went first.
Oh, sorry. Commissioner Marchant.
So the open space C is going to be a little playground in there, right? Do we need to worry about parking at all for that area? If anybody wants to go and drive for that, there's not really, I mean, the streets aren't too wide. Are they going to be parking on the sides of the streets? Do we need to worry about having some parking spaces for that?
I don't think so. Typically these small tot lots only have a few people in them at any one time, and streets are, I think, wide enough to accommodate any just on-street traffic parking. So I just don't see that there's a real need to put additional parking in just for that small of an area.
Sounds good. And then the Zion series, the townhomes on page 26, I think that it's a great facade. Will there be any variance with the colors to kind of differentiate one home from another townhome, or is it all going to blend together in that white?
That was what I don't know. We don't regulate the color on the townhomes.
Gotcha. As far as the building facades do go, does the city have anything that requires builders to vary their facades more, or make sure that they're not building homes that are the same floor plan and facade right next to each other or across the street from each other?
Yes, that's right. We this whole thing was approved as part of the master development plan when it came through, and there were housing types that were shown at that time. So this has kind of all been taken care of as part of that initial preliminary development plan when it came through.
Gotcha. So there's no way we could ask for more differentiation between houses so that it's not just one development of a bunch of boxes that look different shades of pink, basically.
Yeah, I don't think we've got the ability to do that at this point because
It's
we're
too
looking
bad.
at the site plan and subdivision.
Thank you.
Okay. Commissioner Shelton.
Yes, regarding access to parcel C, will there be gates built in that fencing, or will it just be solid fencing? So what I'm suggesting is it might be nice if the residents who border that parcel could access it from their own yard. Do we have any information about that?
There's no information about that, but I don't see an issue with it.
Any other questions for staff? Commissioner Allen?
Yeah. Ray, you did a great job on the background on this. And I'm going to make a statement and just see if I'm tracking one thing correctly. Going through, it seems like everything was very clearly within the master plan, as well as with just the comfort level of staff and what the city will permit. with possibly the exception of parcel C, it seems that that's where the attention was kind of drawn. So necessarily, I think we're running that. So to that end, is there anything in there that you believe that we should be more aware of that parcel C was taking our attention away from?
Oh, no. I would have brought it up.
Okay. No, I appreciate that. So, problems with parcel. So I look at this, I have safety concerns among others. And I think that's exactly where staff was going with the 4-foot fence and some sort of opacity requirement or some sort of requirements that it doesn't become a out of sight, no lights, some of that kind of thing that we're stressed in there. I don't know how to phrase the question. Is there anything that we can't, is this conforming with city code?
Yes, I think with the limitation on the fencing, I think we're good. I think we're good with that.
All right, thanks.
Commissioner Quinney.
So just to kind of a little bit of context, there is a very similar thing to this parcel C, since we seem to want to really talk about this over at the Colonial Park, Colonial Estates Park over just on the other side of 70th. Same thing, houses surround it. It's got one little entrance into there. It's unlighted at night, and I've never heard anybody complain. It's just on the other side of my neighborhood. I've never heard anybody complain. I don't really see that this is that big of an issue. We're going to put a fence there that allow the neighbors to see the park and monitor it, and I think we're good to go. I think we just need to move forward with this process here.
Okay. No further questions. We'll go ahead and open it up for a public hearing. If you are here to speak on this item, you'll be given 3 minutes. Just come up to the podium. And those who are online, if you'll raise your hand, and you'll again have 3 minutes to speak if you so wish. Okay, I see no hands. Oh,
Alexander Hughes.
okay, Mr. Hughes. Can you hear us?
Yes, that seems to be working.
Okay, you'll have 3 minutes.
Okay, thank you. My name is Alexander Hughes. My family and I moved in to one of the single family homes that borders this area just to the northwest, and we are overall, looking forward to the additional neighbors in our neighborhood. When we first moved in, it was originally that commercial land, and we weren't quite sure what was going to be there, and so looking forward to having some good looking homes. We do have a couple of concerns that some of our neighbors have brought up, and the staff report was really hard to read on a lot of the plats and plans. I don't know if that was just the way that the document was created, but first comment would be it'd be great if we could kind of get something that we could actually view and review together. But the two concerns that kind of came to mind, one is that right now we have a fantastic view, and we know that it's not fair to expect that will always stay the case. But as far as the land behind that land that's bordering our houses, or that line of houses, the land is kind of elevated right there. And so we're a little bit concerned that unless that's kind of leveled down, that one, it would, really restrict any sort of view or light coming into those backyards. But then this kind of a sub concern is that we've already had quite a bit of grading issues right in that area. And so if the houses are built there and the backyards are, all of that water is draining now back towards that same line, that could kind of further, exacerbate those problems that we're having. And so I guess hoping that the staff and the review has also included looking at not only the heights of the buildings, but also just making sure that topology and grading is done properly, so that we can, all enjoy that space. And looking forward to seeing ground break and having some additional new families come and join the area.
Thank you, Mr. Hughes. Okay, I don't see anybody else, so we will go ahead and bring it back up to the commission for comment and or motions. Commissioner Allen.
I'd love to make a motion, maybe one question just to follow up on the question that was asked there. My understanding is that each of these lots are going to be required to retain their own runoff. So with grading and everything, there shouldn't be any issues where we're shedding water onto any existing lots, right? Okay. Do we have the motion available on the slides? Okay. I know, right? Well, that's okay.
Do you want to?
So I want to pass it over.
Here, it's right here.
Okay.
Perfect. All right. I move that the planning commission approve the preliminary subdivision and preliminary site plan for Sienna Hills 2 subdivision located approximately 7515 South Copper Rim Drive in the PC IOZ zone, subject to the requirements of approval listed on page 2 of this report.
Do we want to make a, for the,
4-foot high black vinyl coated chain link or equivalent. So I think we're okay.
Okay.
So, yeah, I'm comfortable with that.
okay, we have a motion. Commissioner Quinney.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, it carries 7-0. Okay. Isn't there for the preliminary plat? Oh, okay, never mind. All right. Next one on the agenda is the Grandale Estates Phase 2 and Phase 3, 6681 South, 3200 West, preliminary major subdivision, 6 lots on 2.2 acres, R1 10 E zone. And Kenneth Sanchez is the applicant.
There, how's everyone doing? So we've been working hand in hand with the staff over at West Jordan, the planning commission, as well as the engineering department with Chris and Mark. They've done a great job with everything as far as I can tell and everything's concerned. We're planning on putting 5 properties. We're keeping the existing house where it is right now. And we're also using the existing driveways. We're actually gonna.
Can we get you to talk in the microphone?
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay,
There we go.
Hey.
Yeah,
there we go.
thank you.
Okay, so pretty much what I just said is we've been working with Mark and Krista on this project. They've been doing a great job, everyone over at West Jordan. And the property is located 6681 South, 3200 West in West Jordan. 5 of the properties will utilize a private drive, which is the actual, it's going to be on the south side right there. We're actually going to widen that existing driveway there. And the other driveway, because it's a horseshoe driveway, the other driveway will actually be the driveway for the one lot 201 that's listed up there. The lots are pretty much above average compared to the surrounding homes and neighborhoods. They're between 1/4 of an acre all the way up to a little bit over 1/3 of an acre. So we should have, with the existing driveways, we should have very low impact on traffic or anything like that is concerned. So I don't know, Mark put everything together here and did a good job there. So I don't know what else, if there's any questions or anything.
I have a question for the one part of the driveway.
Okay.
And you said it goes to lot 201.
Correct.
So it continues on up into that lot.
So yes, that will be actually the entry driveway. So that will be the only lot that's going to go off of 3200 West to have direct access to that house, to lot 201.
And this is not a gated community?
Correct.
Okay. And then I have one more question about your access for emergency vehicles. There's no turnaround, I see.
Correct. That's where
Is that right?
yeah, the hammerhead there.
Okay.
Yeah, and that meets fire code there.
Okay. Any other questions for the applicant? Commissioner Marchant?
I was just wondering, who is gonna be enforcing the no parking signage on page 4?
So then we're actually going to have an HOA for. the
And they'll be
community.
enforcing
Yeah.
that?
Okay, any other questions for the Commissioner Wynn?
Yes, what will happen with, on lot 301 where there's an existing building?
So the driveway is going to be off of the actual private drive itself.
But is the existing building going to be used?
Yes, it's going to be a residential house. It's going to actually be part of the HOA as well.
Okay.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, Mark?
All right, thank you, members of the Planning Commission. So I'm just gonna, the applicant's done a great job of kind of introducing the project, but basically, like you said, this is an infill subdivision that's around 6,700 south and 3,200 west, so kind of on the northern end of the city. But it's located in an R110 zone, which has a minimum lot size of 10,000 square foot lots or larger. And so that's pretty much standard throughout that whole area. And then the future land use map is also calling for medium density residential, which is right in line with that same zoning. So with a density range of 3.1 to 5 dwelling units per acre. So this proposed subdivision will actually be 3.3 dwelling units per acre, which is pretty much in line on that lower end of that density spectrum. So some of the surroundings, kind of like I said before, everything around there is just single family residential. There's a few larger lots to the north that are close to the half acre, but those are also within that same R110 zone. That's just kind of how they were originally platted back 50 years ago. Then the lot size and lot width, all the lots are going to be at least 10,000 square feet to meet the minimum standards. Lot widths are all going to be at least 85 feet or wider per code. So it's meeting all those standards. Normally, our subdivision ordinance requires all lots to front a public street, which the 2 lots facing 3,200 west will do. But it does allow for lots to front a private street if the private street's approved by the Planning Commission. So you can kind of see here on the concept plan, there's that central road. Those 4 lots in the back are all going to have frontage on that private road. So some of the justifications for that private road, basically the Planning Commission has the authority to approve a private road in lieu of a public road if it's basically serves an infill subdivision that where putting in a public road would be impractical or overly difficult. So we've got 2 kind of possible scenarios of what would happen if we put in a public road. This first one here, basically the home, as you can see there, the road would pretty much run right through it. So that home would need to go away and wouldn't be able to be preserved like the applicant would like. And so the other issue is that lot to the north, now that's not included in this subdivision at this time, but if it were to be included at some time in the future, it could create a double fronting lot situation, which is not allowed by our subdivision ordinance. Other issues just involve kind of that north end of the cul-de-sac there. You've got kind of these 2 points that might become a maintenance issue. And then the second scenario there on the right, that would just involve the owner's property there. But with running a single cul-de-sac through there, again, the home would have to be demolished. And 2, you wouldn't really have any connection to the property to the north. So it really make a situation where if the neighbor did want to subdivide that, they wouldn't be able to because they just don't have the land to do it or any frontage to connect those that back lot there. So some of the setbacks are a little bit odd in this subdivision. So with this diagram, you can kind of see the two lots facing 3200 West. Those are really just going to be pretty much the standard setbacks there. But where it gets weird is kind of the four lots in the back there. So basically what we've done, because that private road is not parceled out and would not be able to be parceled out because we wouldn't be able to meet lot sizes or frontages or things like that. We've increased those setbacks from the minimums and basically gone above and beyond so that we get kind of a 20-foot setback from the back of the road gutter to the build line. So you get kind of a more uniform front yard throughout there instead of having homes that are butting right up against the street. So that's pretty much it. And I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Any questions for staff? Commissioner Shelton?
Yeah, so I just wanted to make sure I understood correctly. The road, the way it's being proposed, could potentially service the lot to the north if the homeowner chooses to develop in the future.
Correct. Yeah. And that was kind of by design. We felt that there was an opportunity there and we didn't really want to just close the door on that. So we kind of designed it in a way to account for that.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay. We'll go ahead and open up the public hearing. Again, if you're listening online, just raise your hand. If not, you'll be given 3 minutes to speak. State your name, and you'll be given 3 minutes. I don't see anybody raising their hand. Okay, and nobody seems to want to speak to this, so we'll bring it back to the commission for comment and or motions. Commissioner Quinney.
I think this looks great, so I'm just going to go ahead and make a recommendation. Based on the information and findings set forth in the staff report and upon the evidence and explanations received today, I move that the Planning Commission approve the preliminary major subdivision for Grandale Estates Phase 2 and 3, located at 6681 South, 3200 West, with the conditions and requirements of approval listed on page 2 of the staff report.
Commissioner Wynn.
I will second that motion.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, it carries 7-0. Okay, next is the public hearing with the Planning Commission recommendation to the City Council for final action. Text amendment, the cemetery, amend the 2009 West Jordan City Code, Title 8, Chapter 14, Section 7, grave decorations, and Section 8, markers and monuments. Oh, okay. I was looking for who was going to speak on this.
Okay, so my name's Kelly Doller. I'm work in the Parks Department. I'm the cemetery section for the West Jordan City Cemetery and also the Whites Fort Cemetery on 90th and Bangor Highway. So we're bringing this to you to make some adjustments to the cemetery ordinance. Just because of the growing number of burials in the cemetery and some of the safety concerns, we felt like we need to make some adjustments to how we regulate our decorations and how we maintain the cemetery with the decorations there. So we added a few things to kind of help clean that up and then to make it more efficient for our cemetery staff to be able to maintain the cemetery without having to deal with decorations. just so that they can be more efficient. Over the last couple of years, the cemetery has just been very busy with, unfortunately, burials and such. And so with the growing number, we don't have the staff to be able to do like we did in the past with the decorations, by moving them or putting them back and then doing our maintenance around it. So we added a couple things. One of the biggest questions that I've had as been the sexton for about the last 2.5 years, one of the questions I have is, what day do we come through and clean the decorations up? And we never have anything in place. So we're adding that to it. And then also adding a statement in there to help manage the expectations of the loved ones that come to visit their family, of the decorations have to be placed on the headstone and not in the grass area. Because that's where we run into the biggest problem, is they're placing decorations out on the grass where my staff cannot mow or trim around these decorations. So we're trying to find a balance between being more efficient and managing the expectations of the people that visit the cemetery. So that's kind of where we're at with the decorations. As far as the monument, section 814-8, all we're doing there is kind of making it more clear as to the sizing of what's allowed. Before it wasn't very clear. It gave a dimension as to what the upright portion was, but we needed a dimension of what the overall size of the headstone can be, because the plots are only so big. So we can't have them coming in exceeding those dimensions and encroaching on other people's spaces. So those are just kind of the changes that we're trying to make to kind of clean up the ordinance and to get some more clarity to some of these issues. So.
Not like that. I know a lot of the other cemeteries had similar requirements and stuff.
Yeah,
So-
I did a research on some of the surrounding cemeteries and to see what their regulations and what they allowed, and kind of adopted some of what they were doing to kind of fall in line with what everybody's doing, just so we're not out of line.
It makes sense to me. So, Commissioner Allen.
Yeah, so 2 questions. One is on the, I want to clarify as I read through. So you'll remove on Tuesdays.
Right.
Unless it's following a holiday and then it waits 2 weeks.
A week. So it'd be, so let's take Memorial Day, for example, since we just had it. Memorial Day was on Monday, right? So it was that Tuesday. So we didn't clean up anything on that Tuesday. We waited till the following Tuesday, which was today, in fact, to clean them up.
So that makes perfect sense to me. The second one is, will there be some form of signage placed at both sites so that the public is aware walking in that this is the day?
Yeah. And I have signs up right now with the current ordinance and rules that we have. So I'll just make adjustments to those signs and replace them.
Perfect. I think it's a wonderful direction.
Thank you.
Commissioner Hatch.
I just have to applaud whoever used the word unsightly. That's one of my very favorite words. So I don't know if that was you, Duncan, or you, but unsightly. It's a good word.
It's either him or my fellow attorney, Jared Tingy, that came up with that.
Thank
He helped
you.
me with this. So
My favorite word's free. Oh.
May I ask a dumb question? Why do cemeteries come under the domain of planning commission?
Well, it's these are city-owned cemeteries, right? Both of them.
They are,
that
yes.
are under this. We have a privately owned one as well that's right on the border with Taylorsville, I think it is, right?
Redwood
And-
Memorial.
Oh, yeah. So it's a land. Good. Okay. I misunderstood your question at first. So this is technically anything in Title 8 is adopted as a land use regulation because it's in theory something that can be done with land, right? It's not a perfect system, but we have 17 titles in our city code. And out of those 17 titles, I think it's all the titles 8 through 15 and then 17 as well as 5, I think it is. 5 Yeah, so 5, 8 through 15, and then 17. And some of those titles, like Title 13, the zoning title, is like 100% land use regulations, right? There's some like Title 8 that arguably might only be 80 or 85% land use regulations, but it's a lot easier for the city council to adopt an entire title as a set of land use regulations. So the downside to our current system is it's potentially possible that we have to adopt certain provisions as land use regulations only because they're part of a land use title. Someone could argue that maybe this is a land use regulation, maybe it's not, but it's in a land use regulation title.
So I assume a cemetery would be considered high density?
Right. That's pretty high density. Low density.
And he'll be back for weekends.
Well, I would say it's B low density.
People are dying. They don't know.
All right. Is there any other questions?
So Commissioner Thomas, so I've normally we'd include this in the staff report, but and this is just for the record, I've reviewed it based upon the findings of 1377B for text amendments, and I find that it meets all of those findings of the ordinance. So.
All right. Thank you, Larry. Okay. All right. We will open this up to a public hearing. If anybody wishes to speak on this item, please come up and you'll be given 3 minutes. State your name. Going once, going twice. Okay, we'll close the public hearing and bring it back up to the commission.
I would like to make a motion.
Okay,
I'm trying to like move this along here.
let's do
I
it.
think it's a great improvement. I move that the planning commission forward a positive recommendation to the city council for the proposed amendment to the 2009 West Jordan City Code sections 8, 14.7 and 8.14.8.
Okay, Commissioner Quinney. Second. We have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? It carries 7-0. Okay, next one, moderate income housing. Amendments to the moderate income housing plan, the West Jordan General Plan adopting strategies to be compiled with the state law. Larry?
So as I went over this in detail in the work meeting, do you want me to go over them again, or do you have
Just-
questions?
If you'll just do a quick statement and then we can ask questions.
All right, so strategy 1 was to rezone for densities necessary to facilitate the production of moderate income housing. I've identified a timeline, measures, and benchmarks that is to be adopted by December 31st, 2025. The second strategy is to identify general fund subsidies that can be used to subsidize moderate income housing. And that would be adopted by December 31st, 2024. The next strategy is to rezone for higher density or moderate income residential density and commercial or mixed use zones. And that would be making use of the residential overlay district tool that was adopted a few years back. And the benchmark on that would be to adopt that by December 31st, 2025. This goal is one of the required goals or strategies. And because of the track station requirement, this would be to amend basically the city center zoning ordinance to allow a percentage of, or require a percentage of the development to have moderate income housing, and that would to be adopted by December 31st, 2023. And then the next strategy would be to implement zoning incentives for moderate income housing. And that'll go hand in hand with the integrated housing ordinance that we'll be talking about next. And that would be to not only adopt that ordinance, but identify areas that can utilize that ordinance if it's approved by December 31st, 2024. And then the next strategy is to explore participation in community land trust program. And if it's feasible, that to adopt that by December 31st, 2023. And the next one would be similar, but it'd be a different tool, and that would be for the city to look at creating a transit reinvestment zone. And if that is feasible, to be adopt that by December 31st, 2025. The next strategy would be to develop a moderate income housing 55 plus project. The city hasn't done one for a while. However, if the city council chooses to adopt this, the benchmark at this point would be to complete it by 2028, December 31st, 2028. And then, of course, the last one is required, and that is to update. We can't adopt plans or can't create new plans. I guess we'd amend the plans that we have. West Jordan's had all of the areas have transit oriented plans since the inception of light rail in West Jordan. So we'd be amending those. And this is a benchmark that is created by the state, and that is December 31st, 2025. Those all have to be amended and adopted by the city council unless a qualifying application comes in, and that would be a transit oriented or a transit oriented development within 1/2 mile of a transit station. And there's in the statute, it lists what the qualifications are. And if that's the case, then that plan would have to be updated in 1 year. But that's not part of this goal at this point. We'll just be adopting this goal as written. So do you have any questions for me?
Any questions for staff? Commissioner Wynn?
Looks like there's a tremendous amount of work involved in or will take place to follow up with all of these. So good luck.
Job security.
I'm just curious to know if are there any penalties for failure to implement, failure to?
Yes, the state of Utah can, if we adopt or if the council adopts these or other strategies they feel are more appropriate, the 4 required plus the 2 transit, then we can qualify or at least submit our name and be put on a list for priority funding for transportation project and other federal funding that comes through the state of Utah. If the city fails to adopt them, then the penalty would be just the opposite. They could withhold transportation funding and or other funding that comes through the state from the federal government. So I believe the penalty is severe enough that I don't want to be the one that's dropping the ball. I'll let someone else do that. Whoever wants to drop the ball, but I don't want the planning commission or the planning commission staff, who is me, to do that. And so I think that the state seems to have gotten somewhat more serious about this than they have in the past. So
thank you.
I got one quick question, and it probably goes to Mr. Murray over here. A lot of these are going to have some financial impacts. And if we do not have those financial impacts, or like say some of them are with grant money from probably UDOT or whatever with tracks, and they refuse to, because obviously they're not held accountable to the city, would we be held accountable to those type of
So as part of your question, is there funding available to do all these things?
I know there's not going to be all of the.
There actually is some. For the station area plans, for instance, it's not an unfunded mandate. There is money available. As Larry mentioned, the newest planner that he has on his staff, Taylor Jensen, is really good and loves this kind of thing. He's going to chase that money, and it could potentially pay for the full cost of the plans, or at least a really significant portion. So at least that's partly responsive to your question. The main strategies that we're using, or the mandated state requirements, do have at least some, and in some instances with stationary plans, significant funding available. What's the other part of your question now?
I'm just, if we're being held accountable for, say that like, we'll say the transportation issue. And it allows for more buses and so on.
Right.
We don't have any control over that. And I just get a little concerned about with UTA already cutting some of their routes and
Oh,
stuff.
okay, right. So your question is, do we have full control over the things that matter
Right.
related to us either being available to get funding or lose funding or whatever? To which I think the answer is, I think we do have control over the most of the criteria that matters, right, when it comes to the funding.
Well, and I think that really what will happen is that early on, we will determine the feasibility of it.
Right.
And if we start interviewing the people, the powers that be, and they, so to speak, say drop dead, then we'll probably have to come back and amend a goal. Or if the city council determines that it is just too costly to the city, then, you know, there is that provision in the ordinance that, or the statute that allows to amend these goals. Because I think that the statute anticipates that maybe somebody won't participate, or maybe they feel like that West Jordan is not their favorite to participate, because those type of things do happen. And so there is that opportunity to reevaluate the goals. And I think that what the state is looking for is that we are taking measures and benchmarks. And if we get to a benchmark that says this is not going to happen, then that's when we reevaluate the goal and try something else.
That answers my question. That's
Yeah.
what I was concerned about, whether we can amend those later on. So, okay. Well, oh,
I just wanted to voice my support in pursuing the TRZs. I think we would be remiss in not pursuing that opportunity and including that in our goals. So I think that's excellent.
all right, we'll go ahead and open this up to public hearing. Again, if you'd like to speak, you'll be given 3 minutes. Going once, going twice. Okay, we'll bring it back up to the commission. Commissioner Quinney.
I moved for a positive recommendation to the city council amending the moderate income housing strategies of the moderate income housing element of the general plan.
I'll second.
Actually, Commissioner Marchant.
Oh.
Beat you.
Okay.
I second the motion.
Okay, you got to be really quick on there. Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, it carries 7-0. Okay, next, text amendment, integrated housing ordinance, amending the 2009 West Jordan City Code, amending Chapter 5 of Title 13, adopting Article M, integrated housing, and amending Section 13-5-1, zoning districts, citywide applicability. Larry?
And so before I begin, I have to really thank Councilman Green, who this was his brainchild, I believe. I think that he
Aren't they all his anymore?
Say, don't you have these memorized?
well, he's very good at what he does. And so I appreciate it, because it always is good to have a city council person that is willing to put in some hard work on some ordinance. You know, and so I appreciate Councilman Green's leadership on this. And, you know, with these next dozen or so slides, I've broken every rule of PowerPoint presentation. And so I'm not going to read all of it, but the intent, I want to read the intent is of the integrated housing ordinance to allow inclusionary development. This ordinance balances the needs and integrates multifamily and single family housing in the same plan development. The intent is to allow flexible arrangement of residential development, including varying lot sizes, twin homes, townhomes, and multifamily units. Larger scale developments under this ordinance are required to have commercial components to meet the needs of the community. So what this ordinance is it's kind of and kind of not an infill ordinance. It can be used as an infill ordinance, or it can be used in other areas of the city. And as we've done in the last few different ordinances, based upon, you know, court cases and mostly court cases and losses of other communities. We really require a lot before a zone changes anymore. It used to be not this way. The council would approve a zone change, and then you would go to work on the feasibility of it. That's been kind of changed over the last decade because, like I said, of some losses, and so we require a lot before entitlement. And so these next few slides just kind of are examples of what we need before we before the city council will even approve an MDA or a zoning ordinance. And it has to be serviceable, has to be feasible. It has to fit in with the environment. And so that's all in the ordinance. I won't read it. It has to be well integrated, be feasible, complement the area it's in. So all of these things are reflected in a master development plan and a master development agreement before entitlement is even granted. And that's to protect the city, and so that we're not caught off guard that say, well, you've entitled me with zoning now, but you're saying you don't have water and I don't have sewer. Well, it's not a good thing to entitle something with zoning if you can't service it. And so we really do go to a lot of efforts to make sure that these things are serviceable with utilities and roads before they're ever rezoned, or and so this is another verbiage right out of the ordinance. It must result in appealing placemaking. The development has to relate well to the streets in the development, and it has to be designed by a team of professionals that have experience doing this. And that's the type of development we want in the city. We don't want necessarily anymore someone cutting their teeth on development in West Jordan. And this has kind of been in place with the planned community or PC zone for a while, and now the other ordinances we passed as of late. So there's two integrated housing levels of integrated housing. One is limited density, and that's infill projects up to 20 acres. So that would be your smaller sites. I can think of a controversial site on the corner of 90th South and 4800 West that this would have worked very well for. And then the regular integrated housing development, that would be from 20 to 90 acres. So that could be, fairly large development in my viewpoint. 90 acres, certainly not the 600 or 700 acre developments that are approved, but it's that nice, in between. So the maximum density, the uses that are allowed are single family, twin home, duplexes, triplex, multifamily, and multiplex, and those are all be defined in the zoning ordinance. So in the limited density, the gross density shall not exceed 5.5 units an acre. And this is where the moderate income housing goal that I was talking about comes into play, is the gross density maybe up to 5.75 units an acre. And so you think, well, that's not a lot, but over 100 homes, that could result into 2 or 3 homes that have to be moderate income housing, and those would be donated, as we talked about, to that community land trust, or the developer would donate the lot to that community land trust, and they would be allowed to build the home and make the profit on the home. At this point, 75% of in the limited density needs to be single family, and 25% could be multifamily. The lot area and height, they're all approved by the city council and planning commission through the master development plan. But the city council could increase the density to 51% single family, or the unit mix, 51% single family to 49% multifamily, if they felt the site warranted that type of unit mix. All sites may not warrant that, but that leaves the legislative discretion up to the council if they feel like there's adequate justification for that. Open space in the limited density, a minimum of 15% is required to be in open space. 10% of that needs to be in one common central open space park type thing rather than scattered throughout the rest of the development. The remaining 5% can be used as whatever they want, tot lots, trails, that type of thing will be identified in the master development plan.
Larry, can I interrupt you for a moment? Can they do density buy-ups with green space, or is it only with land?
Just
and
only
homes?
with lots.
Okay, so they
Yeah.
can't say
No.
we're putting in
No.
this little strip of grass right here so
No.
we can add, okay, perfect, thanks.
No. And so in the regular integrated housing, the larger, all of the same type of housing mix is allowed. And a multiplex is defined as 6 units per building or less, and so, and the other thing is that in the ordinance, it requires that the multifamily be designed to look like a single family or a large single family home. And this has been done countless times throughout the state of Utah and throughout the United States of America. Is not inventing anything. It's been done all over. The maximum gross density would be 6.5 units the acre, or except if they want to use the moderate income housing density buy-up, they can go up to 7.5 units the acre. And single family requires 50% or 50% of the area to be single family and 50% to be multifamily. And the city council can change that if they wish, to a different unit mix. And with this larger development, there's a minimum of 1 acre needs to be developed in commercial if it's adjacent to an arterial street. And simply for that fact that, there's always nice to have some type of services available to those residents, whether it's a C-store or other type of small retail. Open space in this zone is 20%, so it's larger, and 15% has to be a central park, and a minimum 2,000 square foot clubhouse is required, because you could get a lot of residents in a project in 90 acres. And I think it's nice to have amenities outside of the central city parks and facilities. And lot area and size will all be established through the master development plan. Architectural standards will be approved in the master development plan. Signs, landscaping, parking, and fencing will all, and roads, trails, all need to follow the adopted city standards and ordinances. So with that, I've gone over this very quickly. If you have questions, I'd be happy to answer them to the best of my ability, but staff recommends that the planning commission forward this on to the city council with a positive recommendation.
Do we have any questions for staff? Commissioner Marchant?
Yes. Will this be implemented with the knowledge of the residents? Will they know if they're in an overlay zone? Will they have any opportunity to speak to that, especially if the city council has so much control to control the density of some of these infill lots?
This won't be an overlay, it'll be an actual zone.
Okay.
And so I don't anticipate us rezoning and any existing development with this. It will be basically infill lots that have not been developed. This zoning will be applied to them. Yeah, we certainly would not rezone someone's property without their knowledge. I don't think it's a good practice. We could do it, the city council could do it, but Councilman Green, that causes for some tense meetings, I think.
They want to be reelected.
No, we just don't like those kind of.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, we'll open this up for a public hearing. Okay, Councilman Green.
So first off,
I move that we don't allow him
Names-
to speak.
What was that, Matt? What was that, Matt?
You're not a member of the public. You wrote this.
Yeah.
We already heard from the staff.
Yes, I did semi kind of write this off, but I do want to thank Larry for, he had to put up with me a couple of times. No, we can't do that. Oh, yeah, but and then we changed our mind and yes, we can. And then we just add a different language. So, but here's the ultimate goal of this particular, and you can, Mr. Gardner mentioned a particular piece of property, and this one and another one that we have dealt with recently from the Land Use Committee on the council. There are a bunch of small infill projects that people want to use, and I'm gonna say this: the goal of this ordinance is to eliminate PRDH and eliminate PRD and PRDM. The PRDH, PRDM are giving us headaches. And if we can eliminate the PRD zone and go to something different that will that gives us a better balance, that's where we want to go. As Larry mentioned, the idea for this is that it starts out if it's an infill project in the less than 20 acres, it starts out with a basic density of 5.5 units an acre with a maximum of 25% generally of multifamily units, sixplex or less, that are actually designed to look like a house in the neighborhood, and they all just fit in. And then nobody realizes that there's and I've lived in neighborhoods, even when I had a duplex, I'd live in a duplex, have single family homes around you, and nobody treats you as a renter. And it's not a rental property. And that's what we're trying to do. The other thing we're trying to do here is address the middle housing issue. What we tend to see in West Jordan, and Jay lives across the street from one, is a massive apartment complex with 278 units at 25 units an acre. We have those big complexes, and in Harriman, you see the 8,000 townhomes that get built. What we're trying to do is integrate that so there's better integration, but it's also addresses that middle housing, the duplex, the fourplex, the sixplex. So that's what we're trying to do is help. And then, as you heard, it'll allow a density buy-up. The only density buy-up is for donating houses to a community housing trust. The land would be donated. The developer would still be able to build the house on that property, make the profit from the sale of the house, but not from the land. And the other thing is that the ordinance will also, I'm going to say this, buy us brownie points with the legislature, is that on any of those donated lots, we will waive the impact fees, so that we're truly trying to look at some moderate income housing integrated with neighborhoods. So that's where we're going. That's what we'd like to see. I started working on this when I was on the planning commission a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away, with elections and some other things. Part of this got left by the wayside. But as we've had developments come up, like the corner of 90th and 48th, like the corner of Bangerter and 90th, this gives us better flexibility and more options than just trying to use the PRDH or that everybody wants to use. So that's what it is. Thanks for your time.
Thank you. Anybody else wish to speak? Okay, we'll go ahead and close this public hearing and bring it back up to the commission for either a motion and or comment. Commissioner Marchant.
I'll make a motion.
Okay,
Based on the information and findings set forth in the staff report and upon the evidence and explanations received today, I move that the Planning Commission forward a positive recommendation to the City Council amending 2009 West Jordan City Code, Chapter 5 of Title 13, adopting Article M, Integrated Housing, and Section 1351 zoning districts.
okay, Commissioner Quinney.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, it carries 7-0. Last on the agenda is text amendment Southwest Quadrant Mixed Use Ordinance, amending the 2009 West Jordan City Code, amending Chapter 5 of Title 13, adopting Article N, Southwest Quadrant Mixed Use, amending Section 13-5-1 zoning districts, and amending 13-7B site plans, citywide applicability. Larry.
So, thank you. This ordinance, we've been working on this for a little while now. It's, we have commercial ordinance, office ordinances, residential ordinances, industrial ordinances, manufacturing ordinance or zones. We have been working with the Gardner Company for the last year and a half to try to come up with a master plan, which the Gardner Company has been working with Mr. Jones, who's in the audience, for master planning his, they're the Jones family property. And some of this is outside of a different Jones family, a little bit of it, probably 400 or 500 acres. But what I have outlined here is just about 1,000, maybe 1,100 acres that's left in the city that's undeveloped. You know, it's been used for dry farm for decades. The Jones family were very good at that, very successful dry farmers. However, you know, as growth continues and time marches on, even they realize that, you know, the dry farming in this valley is probably not the highest and best use of property. And so the anticipation is that, you know, it's been the goal of the city for the last few years to create a job center in the southwest quadrant of the city. And I think you see that with the Boeing building, some of the larger data centers out there, of course, Amazon, both the fulfillment center and the truck hub, those create job centers. There's also a very large, another industrial building, the same size as the Amazon building, going a little bit to the east of that will be a instead of one user, will be several users. And so it really is creating a job center here. And so this is kind of the opposite of the northwest quadrant. It's the southwest quadrant. Economic development has been involved in this heavily in this development of this area of the city. And so with the master plan, we determined that we needed a new tool. And, you know, and so some of the purposes is to create a purposely planned development area that promotes high-tech manufacturing, employment centers, flexible commercial office, and mixed density residential in a master plan development. And so as you go through these bullet points, you know, and they're right out of the ordinance, what it does is it creates a mixture of different uses, just not industrial, but there can be commercial, office, and buffer residential mixed in the same 1,000-acre development or 150-acre development. That would be the minimum starting point. But what it would do is it would be predictable for the city. It would lean towards compatibility. How do these uses relate? You know, what is the best way to cite these excuse me, push the wrong button. And so the minimum area, as I said, is 150 acres, and that is to allow, you know, we were going to start large, but then you know, we vetted this through the development community, and they said it's probably best to have 150 acres as a starting point, because there are a few parcels that may want to join in at a later date that aren't hundreds of acres in area. So the development will all be governed by master development agreements, master development plans, and as I talked about in the previous one, we require, again, a lot of upfront work, a lot of updating to city master plans and phasing plans and lotting plans and amenities and that type of thing to protect the city. And so that the city council and the planning commission know exactly what they're getting. This is some of the same verbiage that I read you earlier. Is it well integrated? Is it feasible? You know, is this plan that they're proposing to the planning commission, is it even feasible? You know, somebody puts a 1,100 story building out on the west side, that's probably not feasible. And so, but we need to look at all of these things. Provides a variety of well-designed housing types. And the reason that we're even talking about housing in here is because we have this industrial area, or this job center, as I like to call it, will be right next to somebody's single family home. And some, you know, people have purchased their homes, and we want to make sure and buffer that. And so the anticipation is that a residential buffer will be created. And that's mostly, as you can see on this map, the very top red line, that's the Jones Ranch that was approved last year. Probably along 90th South, or they're along 90th South, and then to the east of that, where there's single family homes. That will be buffered by a multifamily or different types of multifamily product. And if this ordinance is approved, you'll be seeing that later in the summer when Gardner Company presents their site plan to you. But the reason that it'll be buffered with multifamilies, that's generally the hierarchy of buffering between single family to a multifamily product. Now, we're not going to put an apartment complex right next to the single family homes. It'll be twin homes, triplexes, that type of thing. But the key is it will be mostly a for rent product, because those will be right next to industrial, office, commercial uses. And what that allows is that they're not stuck in a mortgage. They're not stuck purchasing, saying this is my dream home, but it happens to be right next to a technology manufacturer, and I don't like that neighbor anymore. And so if they're renting, they're free to move. It gives them, and so that's generally the hierarchy of using housing is buffering between commercial and industrial uses. The other one is the Echo Ridge development that was put in there a few years ago. We will be buffering that with not only a continuation of the park, but also some multifamily to the west of that. And so that's all of this will be controlled by the master development agreement. Master development plan, as required by the ordinance, will show the location of the residential, location of the commercial, the amenities, the infrastructure improvements, the uses allowed in the manufacturing district, are really pretty much everything that's allowed in the M1, M2, and MP zone. The uses, there's a lot more commercial uses allowed, no office, retail in the southwest quadrant. So those little remnant pieces, if you get a 1 million square foot building on a triangular piece of property, you're always bound to have a piece of property that's hard to develop with a large warehouse. And so they're perfect sites for maker spaces, you know, live work type units, retail components. And so this zone is really geared to create the ultimate flexibility for the 1,000 acres that hopefully can be done in a master planned way. So the mixed residential density, as we call it, the density will be approved by the city council with the master development agreement. So medium density will be anticipated to be next to, you know, single family homes and and that would be up to 7.5 units per acre. The density would increase as you get closer to the industrial manufacturing uses. Then a cost, if you get up to U111 on that hard corner, very commercial corner, the density could be up to 40 units the acre if they chose to put residential in that general location. So everything, the design guidelines will be approved with each development, each master plan that will follow a consistent theme for the area. Now you say consistent theme in 1995 is different than a theme in 2022. And so it's hopefully with these master plans that, with the larger development that, there'll be some elements that would probably always remain the same. The trail networks, different types of amenities. However, taste change in building styles, building types, and those can be updated as different developments come on. I've talked about, the commercial, that'll be affixed where the developer and the city council feels the best location for it. Manufacturing, will be without a doubt, be the predominant use of this high, this zone, high-tech manufacturing, warehousing. I'm not going to lie to you. The point is to create a job creation area out here. And so that will be the by the majority of the uses will just be that, job centers. And so, it would be, the design guidelines would be part of the master development plan, a master development agreement. Those will all be approved by the planning commission and city council to give a common, design theme to the area. So you don't have something that's, vinyl siding and the next building is just slump block or something like that. Because you want the area to also be a job center, but you also want it to be attractive to major manufacturers who want to come to the area. And with that, I know I went over a very multi-paged ordinance in very quick fashion. Please pardon me for that, but I'm here to answer any questions you have, and I would recommend that the planning commission forward a positive recommendation to the city council for this ordinance.
Commissioner Quinney. Thank you. So I think this is timely. I think this is good. I do have a question. We went down this road not too many years ago with a research park. And if I remember correctly, I think we were okay with the way it was proposed, but city council killed it because of density issues. Why is this better? Why is this different than what was killed several years ago?
I think that the way that this, I'll just focus on the residential in the West Foothill ordinance was much higher density. And it was only anticipated to be one type of product, one very big building, multifamily product. And it didn't buffer anything. It was basically just wherever the developer felt that they could best place it. The other concern of the council at that time is that they wanted to see the majority or start the development out with manufacturing and commercial uses, but the developer at that time, they wanted to focus on the residential to begin with. And where this development is different, we already have applications in for warehousing, manufacturing uses before the residential has even been, preliminary plan for, and conceptually it's been planned. The densities are much lower in this residential density. I think the last West Foothill was a minimum of 25 up to 75 units the acre. And so that was way high. It wasn't palatable to the city council. We've taken this to the land use subcommittee. They like the way this buffers existing residential and anticipated future residential at Jones Ranch, which are much lower density. And so the maximum you could ever go is up to 40 units an acre, and that's got to be really on a very intense commercial, arterial street intersection, that type of thing. So I think this is a little more refined than the West Foothill one, but I think it gives the same flexibility to the developer. And quite frankly, the developer of this project is seasoned in the type of development that West Jordan wants, and that's manufacturing, warehousing, office. If you look just across the river, that's what they've done up on the old hill. When I was a kid, the old lead flotation mill that we never thought would be anything but, the disaster it is. And if you look, it's quite an attractive site this developer's created. And they've also mixed some residential uses in there also. So that's the difference. I don't know if that's an acceptable answer, but that's.
Oh, that's good. So just two follow-ups. One, it sounds like what we've done is fix the problem that Kelvin hates, and that we're gonna build a whole bunch of houses and then pray that the commercial comes, but now we got the commercial first this time. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay, and the second is, if it's the same developer, can we get a Winco out there? Not a Winco, sorry, I meant a Topgolf. Winco's fine. Topgolf's what
Councilman
I'm looking for.
Whitelocks was Trader Joe's, and what else? She's obsessed with Trader Joe's, and so there's a
We
couple.
don't need a Trader Joe's out there. Topgolf.
Okay, any more questions for staff? Okay, we'll go ahead and open this up to public hearing. If you're here to speak on it, you'll have 3 minutes. Okay, we'll go ahead and close the public hearing and bring it back up to the commission and Commissioner Quinney.
All right, thank you. Based on the information and findings set forth in the staff report, upon evidence and explanations received today, I move that the planning commission forward a positive recommendation to the city council amending the 2009 West Jordan City Code, Chapter 5 of Title 13, adopting Article N, Southwest Quadrant Mixed Use, Section 13.5.1 zoning districts and 13.7B site plans.
Commissioner Shelton.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, it's carries 7-0. And that will conclude our meeting. Do I have a motion to?
I move that we adjourn.
I'll
Oh, wait, that's my favorite word, Larry.
All right, we are adjourned.